Hi, Smart Driver. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you about why the traffic safety record in the United States is so bad. Despite wealth, advanced vehicle technology, and decades of engineering improvements, the U.S. country continues to experience higher traffic fatality rates per capita and per vehicle mile traveled, more so than comparable nations such as Sweden, Germany, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Canada. And according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 42,795 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes in the United States in 2022. When adjusted for population, the U.S. fatality rate consistently exceeds that of peer nations. Data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development shows the U.S. traffic fatality rate per 100,000 population is often nearly double, twice as much as that of several Western European countries. This is not random, it is systematic. So we're talking about how bad the problem is in the United States. And it is bad when you say that show that the U.S. traffic fatality rate per 100,000 population, so we're talking in a country of 300 million people, is nearly double that of several Western European countries. Now, as I said when I was talking about in the introduction, European countries did not grow up with the motor car as the United States did, and most cities and roads in the United States are designed for the motor car. Roads and street systems and infrastructure in Europe, grew up with the horse and buggy and with walking as your main form of transportation. So that is your fundamental historical difference between the United States of America and European countries when you're comparing those two. All right, the data, US versus other high-income nations, speed, culture, road design. Okay, one of the most powerful predictors of crash severity is speed. But you can't really say that. Crash severity is speed. So the more speed, the more chances you being involved in a fatal crash. This is like saying the higher you fall from, the more likely you are to die. Yes, speed is an easy target, and I want to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation, about speed as being the thing that is targeted as the most sinister aspect of traffic safety. Research from the World Health Organization confirms that small increases in average speed result in exponential increases in fatal crashes. The physics is straightforward. Kinetic energy increases with the square of velocity. So as you increase in speed, your energy in the vehicle increases exponentially. So if you go from 20 kilometers an hour to 100 kilometers an hour, you've increased your speed by 5 times, but the amount of energy in the vehicle has increased 25 times. The U.S. differs from many peer nations in both posted speed limits and roadway designs. Wider lanes, longer straight corridors, higher rural and interstate speed limits, less traffic calming devices. In contrast, countries such as Sweden have implemented systematic speed management policies under Vision Zero frameworks. Speed cameras and automated enforcement are widely accepted in many OECD countries, but remain politically controversial in much of the United States of America and in Canada as well. We do not like our speed cameras in Canada, and more so in the United States of America. Roads communicate expectations. When infrastructure signals high speed is normal, drivers respond accordingly. In other words, if the roadway is wide open, there's very little traffic, they will speed. Key contributing factors: driver behavior, road design and infrastructure, vehicle size and mix, speed culture, enforcement variability. So the American vehicle fleet has shifted dramatically towards SUVs and pickup trucks since the 1990s. According to U.S. fleet data, light trucks now represent the majority of new vehicle sales. Heavier vehicles provide greater occupant protection in single vehicle crashes, but increase risk to other road users, especially pedestrians and occupants of smaller vehicles. Research published in the Accident Analysis and Prevention demonstrates that vehicles' mass disparity increases fatality risk in multi-vehicle crashes. In other words, you got a whole bunch of vehicles and you got a little itty bitty Kia and you got a big Suburban, Chevy Suburban. The person in the little Kia is more likely to die as a result of that crash. Additionally, pedestrian fatalities have risen significantly over the past decade in the United States, a trend linked in part to vehicle front end height and design. Thus, even if crash frequency were similar across countries, crash severity may be higher in the United States due to fleet comparisons. So they're talking about all of the cars in the United States of America as a generalization. They are much, much larger, and they haven't gotten smaller in the last 20 or 30 years. Take the 1998 Honda CR-V that I drive, for example. If I park it beside a new anything after 2020 CR-V, the new 2020 CR-Vs, Honda CR-Vs, are probably a third bigger than my little 1998 Honda CR-V. Driver behavior and risk culture, impairment and risk tolerance. Behavioral factors are central. The National Highway Traffic Safety Association reports consistently identifying speeding, alcohol impairment, and distractions as leading contributors to fatal crashes. The U.S. has persistent alcohol-impaired driving fatalities, and one of the smart drivers, I can't remember which one, was talking about drunk driving. Drunk driving is a significant problem in the United States of America. Significant distracted driving from mobile device use, not only mobile device use, but new vehicles with the telematics and the screen in the center of the console is causing high levels of distracted driving. High tolerance for aggressive driving behaviors. Cultural framing matters. In many European and Asian countries, driving is framed explicitly as a regulated privilege with strict compliance expectations. In the United States, it is often framed socially and politically as a personal freedom issue, much along the lines of the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. When enforcement is inconsistent, behavior adapts accordingly. In other words, we have attitudes that this is my right. This is my right to drive. Speed and road design, wide lanes and long straight corridors encourage speed, higher posted speed limits. If we look at Montana, for example, the speed limit in the state of Montana and most of the Midwest states is 70, 75 miles an hour. So it is much higher. Less traffic calming compared to Europe and Japan. Fewer automated speed enforcement systems, as I mentioned previously. Okay, vehicle size and crash severity. We talked about this already. A high percentage of SUVs and pickup trucks. Increased mass leads to greater crash energy. So you've got mass, which is the weight of the vehicle, in combination with vehicle speeds. Crash compatibility issues between vehicle types. So we were talking about that in terms of bigger vehicles crashing with smaller vehicles. Licensing and driver education differences, less rigorous testing in some states, shorter training requirements as compared to those in Europe for sure, lower financial barriers to licensing, and you go past people's houses here, especially where I live in Canada. Some of the driveways have 4, 5, 6 vehicles in it. If it's a house with parents and teenagers, 3 parents and teenagers, everybody has a vehicle. I mean, sometimes the parents each have 2 vehicles. So there are a lot of cars in the driveway, okay? Limited ongoing driver reevaluation. So there's never any requirement for drivers to retest and to prove that there is anything wrong with their licensing. There are some states, California, for example, sometimes requires defensive driving courses for drivers that have been pulled over and received speeding tickets and whatnot. But for the most part, drivers are not required to take any professional upgrading in terms of driving. Enforcement and accountability, variation between states, limited use of speed cameras. Actually, speed cameras in the United States of America are almost non-existent. Legal and political resistance to automated enforcement, which I talked about previously, and perception of low likelihood of penalty. So the penalties, even for speeding, are not very severe in the United States of America. It's not going to affect your insurance and whatnot. Okay, infrastructure and urban planning. The United States is uniquely car dependent among wealthy nations. Suburban development patterns increase. They drive more miles than other countries in the world. The exposure time to risk of being in a motor vehicle, high-speed arterial road usage. According to transportation safety research, increased exposure correlates strongly with higher absolute crash counts. Many European cities prioritize pedestrian-first design, lower urban speed limits, often 30 kilometers an hour in city centers, and multimodal infrastructure. The U.S. historically prioritized vehicles throughout over injury minimization. System design shapes outcome. Now, as I said, historically, Europe grew up with the horse and buggy and walking cities. And when the motor car came about, it was more expensive to own a car. There were much more stringent requirements to get a license. To have high density population, you can build public transportation infrastructure. The United States of America does not have high density population. The United States of America has low density population, except for a few populated cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York City, and some other metropolises in the United States. But for the most part, the United States of America is low density population. And when you have low density population, you do not have the tax base to invest in public transportation systems. And as well, historically, because the United States of America grew up with the motor car, it put its attention towards building road systems, the interstate system in the United States, for example. And therefore, it does not promote walking. For anybody that lives in the United States of America, or anybody that's visited the United States of America outside of the cities, outside of New York City, for example, I would say that most people do not walk. Most people in the United States of America drive. What other countries do differently? Vision Zero versus traditional safety models. Sweden's Vision Zero policy explicitly states that no loss of life is acceptable and that system designers share responsibility with other road users. Now, Vision Zero is an initiative by traffic safety authorities that we can make traffic so that there are zero fatalities. This is a very lofty goal, and I am not on board with this. And as far as I'm concerned, it will never happen. It's like having Lego in your house. Unless you get rid of all the Lego, you're never going to step on a piece of Lego in your bare feet in the middle of the night. It's the same thing with Vision Zero. The only way you're going to stop traffic crashes is if you get rid of all the cars. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. The traditional American model has often emphasized driver responsibility over systematic design responsibility. The philosophical differences matter. Vision Zero frameworks incorporate speed management, road redesign, protected cycling lanes, data-driven interventions. While many U.S. cities have adopted Vision Zero rhetoric, implementation remains uneven. So again, Vision Zero in the United States of America. It's a nice lofty goal when you have high density populations, but when you have low density populations, these kinds of changes to the infrastructure, speed management, road design, protected cycling lanes, these are not realities. As I said, it is not part of the American culture to either walk or ride your bicycle. There are some people that do, but for the most part in the United States of America, this is something that you do on the weekend. You go out to the park and take the dog for a walk. You do not do this during the week. You drive your car. You get in your car and drive it. All right, technologies and modern accountability. Modern vehicles have advanced driver assistance systems, ADAS, such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure warnings, blind spot monitorings. But for those of you who have come here on a regular basis, you know that these technologies, lane assist, blind spot detectors, their observation technologies in the vehicles, these have all eroded good driver behavior because drivers are now relying on backup cameras. They're relying on blind spot detectors and they're not shoulder checking. So is the technology good? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Okay, these technologies improve safety outcomes. However, research indicates partial automation can sometimes increase driver over-reliance or distraction. So, as I said, the technology may or may not be good. It's the same thing with automatic settings on headlights. When it's overcast or it's raining and the windshield wiper's on, most people will not turn their headlights to the on position to activate their taillights to make themselves visible. Dash cams and telematics have improved post-crash accountability and commercial fleet oversight, but they do not replace preventative system designs. Technology mitigates risk. It does not eliminate behavioral and infrastructure causes. Solutions and a path forward, exposure and geography. The U.S. has large rural road networks, long travel distances, high interstate mileage, as I said, low density population. Rural roads have higher speed limits and delayed emergency response times. The National Highway Traffic Safety Association data shows rural fatality rates exceed urban rates per capita. That's a given. We've known that forever, that rural fatality rates are twice as much as those in the cities. And because of emergency vehicle response time, emergency crews getting you and getting you to a hospital. Geographic scale increases exposure to risk. So what they're saying is low density population in the United States of America. Many people are traveling in remote places far away from hospitals, and they get into a crash and they don't get the medical attention that they need. Therefore, the crash becomes fatal. All right, conclusion. A systems problem. So why is the U.S. traffic safety record worse than comparable nations? Larger vehicle fleet composition, behavioral tolerance for risk, less uniform licensing rigor, variable enforcement, car-dependent infrastructure, high exposure levels. No single factor explains the gap in the traffic safety record in the United States of America. Traffic fatalities are predictable outcomes of system designs interacting with human behavior. The evidence suggests that improving the U.S. safety record requires consistent speed management, which is something that is going to be a very, very steep uphill battle. Infrastructure redesign, enhanced driver training, uniform enforcement, cultural reframing of road safety. And at the individual level, drivers still control 3 critical variables. And these are my 3 critical variables: space, speed, and attention, mapping and tracking other road users, having situational awareness. Systems matter, but so do individual choices. As I said last weekend, my new favorite saying, a driver is smart. Drivers, plural, are dumb, stupid, and panicky. So take care of yourself on the roadway and know that it's not a matter of if something goofy is going to happen or somebody else on the roadway is going to do something goofy. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. So put in place space, situational awareness, mapping and tracking intersections, and knowing what's going on about you and responding accordingly to what's going on the roadways.